The Republicans talk about big, beautiful bill. I think this is a big, ugly bill. Let's call it what it is. It is the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in U.S. history. This reconciliation package proposes devastating cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. My Republican colleagues will tell you that they are just going after waste, fraud, and abuse, but let's be clear. The only way to slash this much safety net spending is by making it harder for people to survive.
As an employee and an agent of the president, I think has certainly more Democratic legitimacy than Anthony Fauci did, and he certainly has more Democratic legitimacy than the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who have been running our lives for several years, the waste of which he is rooting out currently. President Trump here with DOGE is doing exactly what he was elected to do. DOGE is a part of the Trump mandate. It's extremely popular. In fact, Elon Musk and the DOGE movement right now are polling at a higher approval rating than Joe Biden had.
They keep saying the border crisis is complicated. They say it's about compassion. They claim no one could have predicted what's happening. But then a border state congressman steps into a hearing room and, in just a few minutes, tears that entire narrative apart. What you're about to hear isn't a partisan rant. It's a blunt reality check aimed straight at sanctuary state governors who welcomed the policies, gained political points from them, and are now acting surprised by the results. So grab a drink, stay focused, and if immigration law, federal enforcement, or basic accountability matter to you, stick around until the end. And don't forget to hit the like button before we get into it.
Their healthcare and nutrition assistant. That means more untreated illnesses, more hungry children, more preventable deaths. This isn't just line items in the budget. There are people's lives, the sacrifice of human dignity and of life itself. And for what? So that your billionaire friends can get nearly $300,000 in tax cuts? This is not a serious budget. This is a green light for authoritarianism, for inequality to run rampant. It is a police state budget wrapped in billionaire tax cuts.
Mr. Gill from Texas is recognized for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, thank you for all of your hard work. I'm thrilled about this piece of legislation as it's getting started. This reconciliation bill, I believe, will balance. It will extend the Trump tax cuts for the working class so that they don't experience the biggest tax increase in American history, and it'll grow the economy. But of course, it will also help us to implement the Trump agenda, which is to clean up the chaos and destruction that Joe Biden unleashed on our country over the past 4 years. It will help us fund the mass deportation of illegal aliens who have been murdering and and pillaging American citizens. It will help us unleash our fossil fuel energy sector, and it will allow us to rebuild our military. And of course, it will help us implement DOGE, which this amendment targets, among other things. As DOGE has been rolled out, I think it's been a bit curious because I found that so many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not been upset about the waste, fraud, and abuse that this process has uncovered. Rather, they've been angry that the fraud has been exposed at all. We found that for decades, the administrative state has been weaponized against the American people. We can give example after example of flagrant abuses of American taxpayer dollars. We've heard of some of them earlier, but I'll name a few more. $1 million spent to boost French-speaking LGBTQ groups in West and Central Africa through the State Department. Almost $50,000 on a transgender opera in Colombia, also through the State Department. Over $7,000 for a BIPOC speaker series in Canada through the State Department. I think it's worth noting that normal, sane Americans don't know what BIPOC means, and neither do I. $80,000 for an LGBTQ community center in Slovakia, and over $16,000 for a united and equal queer feminist discourse in Albanian society, whatever that is. And of course, we also know that our taxpayer dollars have been going to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year to fund left-wing media outlets like NPR and PBS, paying for welfare for illegal aliens, and paying for giving out payments to international organizations that are censoring and pushing for the censorship of American citizens. Our own federal government is using taxpayer dollars to promote ideologies that tens of millions of Americans find utterly repulsive. I think if the other side of the aisle has such a deep ideological opposition to this DOGE process, I challenge them to be straightforward with the American people and explain why taxpayer dollars should be funding queer feminist discourse in Albanian society or drag shows in Ecuador. I don't think that they will, but I would love to see it if they did. Elon Musk, acting as an employee and an agent of the president, I think has certainly more democratic legitimacy than Anthony Fauci did, and he certainly has more democratic legitimacy than the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who have been running our lives for several years, the waste of which he is rooting out currently. President Trump here with DOGE is doing exactly what he was elected to do. DOGE is a part of the Trump mandate. It's extremely popular. In fact, Elon Musk and the DOGE movement right now are polling at a higher approval rating than Joe Biden had on his way out of the White House. President Trump, of course, is polling.
Congressman Andy Biggs doesn't start with emotion. He starts with facts. He highlights what the media often skips. Chicago takes in 50,000 migrants. They declare an emergency. New York takes 220,000. They call it unsustainable. Meanwhile, Yuma, Arizona, population 80,000, receives millions over the course of the Biden administration. One hospital, one food bank, limited law enforcement, collapsed infrastructure. Then comes the line that matters. Illinois didn't ask for this crisis. Neither did Yuma. That's the moment the sanctuary state argument begins to crumble. Biggs explains why migrants are heading to Chicago and New York, not climate, not coincidence. Sanctuary policies. Migrants told him themselves they believed they'd be shielded from immigration enforcement. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sanctuary leaders promised protection, then complained when enforcement had consequences. Blocked ICE detainers, and blamed border states for being overwhelmed. These aren't unintended consequences. They were predictable outcomes. Then Biggs pivots to Governor Walz. The hearing turns tense. He asks one simple question. Does Walz agree with his Attorney General that Minnesota counties cannot hold individuals for ICE, even with an immigration warrant? No speeches, no filibuster, just yes or no. Walz won't answer. He dodges, he deflects, he hides behind independence of offices. The clock runs out. That silence says it all. Next, Governor Pritzker takes the spotlight. And it gets worse. Big cities claim a constitutional right not to assist with deportations. Biggs asks the obvious follow-up. Which part of the Constitution? Pritzker says he doesn't even recognize the lawsuit filed on his behalf. Not a legal defense. A political escape hatch. Biggs closes with federal statutes. 8 U.S.C. 1373, 1324, detainer authority, and makes it crystal clear. There is no legal distinction between criminal and civil immigration detainers when it comes to cooperation. Sanctuary jurisdictions aren't confused, they're non-compliant. And the final hammer? You are violating federal law. Yield back. Quick recap, 330 to 355. No theatrics. Just a border state reality check crashing into sanctuary state denial. Specific questions. No answers. If you want more moments where talking points collapse under basic law and logic, hit subscribe. Share this clip, and remember, silence at a hearing like this is policy.